We are back. It's the Pod Sham Pod, joined by Cleveland Cavaliers legend Spencer Davies and my normal co-host Max Klotz. Spencer, for our listeners who are not deep in the Cavs metaverse, covers Cleveland, and we've had a really good time following his content over the years. He's been on the pod before for the Truthers. You'll remember him. Max is a Knicks fan, so this is going to be awkward. I kind of feel like the Maury Povich of this trio. We're just going to try to find some common ground, and isn't that what it's about, you know? West Coast, East Coast, Central Time, just three guys finding a way to talk about one of the craziest games in a long time. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Appreciate you guys having me on, and I love it. I love that I'm going against somebody who's a Knicks guy. And listen, I've just had so many different moments throughout this postseason with the Cavs where they're the most volatile, unpredictable team in the world. So it wasn't really all that surprising to see another moment come to the list. So it's not going to be as adverse as you would think it would be, I think.
By the way, the Knicks fans felt the same way in the Atlanta series for a second. So I'm just glad the Blazers made it easy for me and just farted it out in round one against San Antonio. Max, did you have the Knicks minus 10.5 last night?
I refuse to, at this point, to make any predictions or place any wagers on this Knicks team. It is just like, I'm honestly just, I've been in a continuous state of shock since probably game 6 of the first round at just what this team has done for the last 8 games now. Sometimes in a way of blowing teams out, sometimes in just like clutch nails as they were last night. I've given up on trying to figure out exactly what this team is because every single time I think I have them nailed down, it looks different. They play different. But I'm just trying to enjoy the ride as much as I can because, even if whenever it ends, you want to be able to say you enjoyed it when it was at its peak. So, yeah, I don't know where to begin from that game last night, but it really did feel like for Knicks fans, karmic retribution for game 1 against Indiana last year, which I think we potted right after that game, Drew, or like maybe the day after. The most painful loss I've ever experienced as a fan, that Halliburton shot bouncing like 15 feet in the air and dropping in. And it was fitting that in the exact same situation, game 1, Eastern Conference Finals, the shoe was on the other foot, which I just did not see coming.
Yeah. A year ago when Halliburton hit that shot and Nesmith hit like 7 of those shots, I actually had money on the Pacers and I was doubling down and tripling down the whole night. Mom, if you're listening, I don't bet anymore. Don't worry. But one of the craziest experiences of my life in my brief gambling career. I know it sounded like a throwaway comment, but seriously, imagine if you took the Knicks minus 10.5. Yeah. Spencer, let's start before game 1. Like, how did you feel about the series? Did you issue an official prediction? Coming into Tuesday night, what were your feelings about this matchup?
The matchup itself, I feel like it was an opportunity to kind of exact revenge for 2023. The teams are different. There's different head coaches. The role players are different, a little bit more veteran laden here in Cleveland now than they were in years past. But the meat on the bone, so to speak, is the same. You got Donovan Mitchell, you got Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Dean Wade. Sam Merrill was on that roster, even though he didn't play in that series. And then on the other side, you have Jalen Brunson, you have Deuce McBride, you have Josh Hart, and I think there was one more. I can't remember.
Mitch.
Yeah, it was probably Mitch Robinson, the most important of those.
yeah,
so,
you blocked that one out.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I've written about this too a ton of times, so like my brain's completely scrambled. But yeah, it's one of those things like where it's almost full circle, where they have a chance to, I don't know, in their minds, rewrite the wrongs of that time. And also when they weren't ready for that stage, whether it was Donovan or whether it was Jarrett and Evan, to kind of just come back in the series and prove everybody how much they've grown mentally, physically, just having experience from the last few years, going through the heartbreaks, going through the injuries and the setbacks, whatever you want to call it. And I think for 3.5 quarters, they did that yesterday, which is why I remain kind of steadfast in my belief that they have an opportunity still, even with the one game going the way it did yesterday, as heartbreaking as it was. The social media rage room and the personalities just completely killing pretty much everybody on the team in one way or another, trying to point the finger and all that stuff. But yeah, this postseason run has been one of the most maniacal that I've ever been a part of. That's the best way I think I can describe it. There's just so much, as I said at the beginning, volatility, unpredictability. They've been in pretty much every situation possible to this point, whether they were up big and gave up a lead like yesterday, whether they were down, came back, and then lost. I was in Toronto for RJ Barrett's heaven-sent game winner at the end of that. I was there, obviously, in Detroit. I was at every game in the series against the Pistons, and they start out 0-2. They come back, win 3 straight. You have a chance to close it out, and then you lay an egg on your home floor, and then you go on the road and completely emasculate and eviscerate the Pistons in front of their home fans. So it's like there is a Jekyll and Hyde characteristic to the Cavs, and you were kind of describing that earlier of your Knicks, Max, but like there has been such a Jekyll and Hyde with this group, which it makes sense because they've only been together for 2.5, 3 months, and that's what happens when you trade for someone mid-season and completely alter your lineup, alter your chemistry in the name of bringing more veteran guys in. But by the same token, that's why it's kind of figuring out things on the fly. But also in respect to that, you know what you're capable of when you do put it all together, when you're healthy and all your guys are making shots. And if they're not, they're defending their butts off and they play with a faster pace. Usually it results in a good result, because when they're bogged down and they're in the half court and they're turning it over and other teams are getting points off of those miscues, it's a recipe for disaster. The Cavs are 7-0 when they score 112 or more in the playoffs. So they have their recipe. It's good offense. It's getting stops on the other end, and it's getting out and running.
Yep. This was the quintessential. They went up big and they stopped playing offense with pace and urgency. You could literally see, and there were actually moments when they were up by around 20 in the fourth quarter that I thought Dennis Schroeder was like really smart. Like the adults in the room, like, slow down. There's no need to try to find a transition look. Let's kill another shot clock. And who cares about even getting good looks when you're up by 20 with 6.5 minutes left? Dean Wade is the only guy on the Cavs last night who played 20 minutes and had a positive plus-minus differential. Dennis Schroeder, who was like 1 for 9, actually had one, but he played 18 minutes. Even after the barrage from the Knicks, like they cut it to 6, and then Evan Mobley hits that improbable 3, and you're just like, oh my God, they did just enough to hold on. But like you said, the Cavs' path here has been so improbable. After what they pulled in Game 5, down 9 with a couple minutes left in Detroit, to send that game to OT, I'm not writing you guys off. And when Donovan Mitchell has enough playoff equity in my mind now that when he says it's one game, we could have lost by 40 and it would still be 1-0. Like, I genuinely believe him. And also we've seen the Knicks collapse after looking like they have all the heart in the world. But the last thing I'll say before I pass it to Max is I've slandered Jalen Brunson a lot on this podcast. And I need to own up to that at the top here. I think he was 12 for 17 at the rim last night. He was like 1 for 6 from 3. It didn't matter at all because he just went deep into his bag, all sorts of lefty finishes in the paint, off the glass, off 1 foot, off balance. And the Cavs, with a couple of the best rim defenders on planet Earth, just didn't have an answer for Jalen Brunson when it matters. We should talk about the Harden switches at some point. But Max,
we'll get there.
Max, what do you want? Just spray and pray.
Yeah, the 1 for 6, the one was quite a big one, which I don't know why on the broadcast the crowd kind of sounds muted, but in certainly in Knicks Twitter, when you see some of like the cell phone footage from inside the stadium, like the crowd pop on that Brunson 3 to cut it to 5 was like unlike anything I've heard. I I mean, I'm trying to think about like the big picture of these two teams over the last couple of years. And the last time we had Spencer on was in the midst of that 24, I think it was a 24-0 start that Cleveland had to start 2 years ago, right? And it was like, this is the sort of East powerhouse. And, you know, last year in the playoffs, both the Knicks and the Cavs at times underwhelmed. And I'd say Cavs probably overall underwhelmed. The Knicks, like the final result looks good, but the way it ended definitely put a sour taste in the organization's mouth. They fired the head coach despite, you know, being within 2 games of making the finals. And going into this season with the injuries in the Eastern Conference, looking at it, these were supposed to be the 2 teams that were the 2 best teams, like by far. They'd be the last 2 standing. Didn't look like that for long stretches of the year, where Cleveland makes this seismic trade of sending out their young star in Garland for Harden. The Knicks just seem like they're kind of struggling with their identity. I guess depending on glass half full, glass half empty, you could say they were tinkering versus struggling with their identity over the course of the season. And now just to be here where we are with these 2 teams where, and we saw it in the Christmas matchup. Like, I think that was another one. Cavs went up huge and the Knicks came back. Like, these 2 teams are, I think, very evenly matched. The Cavs are a far better opponent than either of the teams the Knicks played in the first 2 rounds, and can pose a lot of like schematic problems for them that we saw for the first 3.5 quarters. And literally, like, I went on my Peloton like with about 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and I was like, I'm going to watch this out of the corner of my eye. I don't think that this is going to sort of end well. And like, as every couple minutes, I kept looking over. I was looking over the whole time. But Brunson would hit a shot, Brunson hit, and I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And really, like, my mentality went to, for most of the game, if this is the Cat and the OG Anunoby that the Knicks are going to get, they're not going to win this series. And through Brunson's heroics and like getting it to overtime, you started to see OG wake up, started to see some of the rotation players wake up, and some of like the depth of this Knick team and their adaptability. And yeah, we can get into some of the specific like X's and O's from last game, but I can just say, as someone who experienced that, I'll be very curious to see game 2, because as someone who experienced that game 1 sort of heartbreak last year against the Pacers, it felt like the hangover from that game really lingered over the rest of the Eastern Conference Finals for the Knicks, just that having been so close, especially because they were at home. You know, the Cavs are a little bit different because they're on the road, so it's not necessarily a game they should win, especially, you know, coming off a 7-game series. Knicks have had a long sort of time to rest. But losing a game in that way can really mentally hang over a team. So yeah, I very curious to see game 2 if the Cavs come out with sort of fight again, show a lot of the same stuff that caused the Knicks problems, which we can get into, or if that was kind of their best punch, which I doubt, you know, being a conference finals team. But yeah, that was scattershot. I'm still trying to get my thoughts straight, but Spencer, what are you expecting as far as game 2? And what do you think like are things that they can build on from game 1?
Yeah, I think the build on part, and we'll see how the Knicks defend them, because in the fourth quarter, I thought Mike made a really good adjustment by taking 2 off the ball, because the third quarter was an absolute wreck for New York, because every time they sent 2 or blitzed Harden or Mitchell, then it was getting into the swing. It was getting into the pockets, spray outs, everything. Cavs were hitting shots. Sam Merrill sidestep 3, Max Strus, nice, corner 3. Like they had the ball moving. That changed in the fourth.
Quick, my Knicks chat was just going off of like, why are we doubling so aggressively? It's just double, swing, open 3. Like, how many times are we going to do this?
How many times? Exactly. Yeah. No, how many times? And then, in the fourth, to his credit, adjusted, just said, okay, defend them one-on-one and see what happens. And look, Landry Shamet did a heck of a job on Donovan Mitchell. Like, put it how it is. I mean, I don't want to take away from Landry either, but Donovan had to be getting gassed at that point because his usage was really high and he wasn't really getting off of the ball as he was in the third quarter. And he was getting downhill the whole time. Like, shoot, I think the way they started the second half is one of the craziest plays I've seen. Diving on the floor, trying to get a jump ball, drops it, picks it up, and then goes full length of the court to get a nice, easy bucket. Like, Donovan was outstanding. Yeah, first 3 quarters of that game. He was so good. But I think this is what happens when you're coming off of a 7-game series. Game 7 was literally 48 hours beforehand in Detroit. And as the series goes on, as games go on, these guys are going to get tired. So you're going to have to find a way to free yourself up. And when you do have a matchup that you have, you got to beat your man. Donovan wasn't beating his man. James Harden was not beating his man. And the problem for the Cavs last night is when they built that lead, goodwill, like really well done, really well executed third quarter. You mentioned Dennis Schroeder after an abysmal first half. He was awesome in the third quarter. Awesome. Just making the simple play, getting downhill and getting it to the bigs or spraying out to the shooters. But what happened was when they had that 22-point lead, I likened it to a QB kneel. They were just draining the clock. It was James Harden just standing there on the wing. Maybe he tried to get by once, but then he would just dribble back. And they didn't initiate their offense until there was like 5 seconds left on the shot clock. And I got people on Twitter asking me like, well, no, they were shooting shots way too early in the shot clock. I mean, no, you're talking about later in the game when it got tight. When they were up by 20 plus, they were acting as if they had already crossed the finish line. And that's one kind of playing front runner, playing arrogant in a way to me, because it's not in the bag. You're on the road. It's game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. You're in total control. The Knicks offensively were so lost. When I saw Jordan Clarkson put up that floater and missed on the other side of the rim, I was like, okay, they are lost. Even Jalen Brunson, when he got to the middle of the paint, he tried to pump fake Evan Mobley 4 times. Evan stayed right on his feet and was like, what are you doing? You know, like, and they had no semblance of a rhythm. Every three that they threw up was a medicine ball. It wasn't even hitting the rim. Like, they had him completely out of sorts.
It was, It was one of those Knicks runs where the offense is so bad that like Jordan Clarkson can convince himself that it's his turn to try to save the team. You know, because like when Brunson isn't in his bag and Cat's forcing and he doesn't have good touch around the rim, that's when the Knicks look like they can't score. And they have enough talent, enough guys with offensive pedigrees that it just turns into a hero ball. I can save us. I can end this horrid offensive run. The fact that threes started to fall after that phase of just pure offensive misery for New York, it breaks my brain.
Yeah. Well, you gotta give it up to get it back, and that's the thing. Like you talk about hero ball. That's the ugly habit that the Cavs fall back into. Donovan and James particularly. Like, they are the ones that dominate it after they see what's working. Yeah. When the Cavs have their bigs involved, and Jarrett Allen got to the line, he missed some key free throws during that stretch, by the way. But I thought Jarrett was good. Jarrett was all over the offensive glass. Evan, always good when you get him involved in the pocket, and he's turned into a playmaker. He's not a back-to-basket guy. He did some good things in the first half on that accord, but that's not his strength. He's a face-up guy. He's almost likened, to me at least, as like sort of like a Draymond Green type of player for this team in particular. And when they started to dominate the ball, Harden and Mitchell started to dominate the ball, that's when things got bogged down. And they weren't looking for the next simple pass. Kenny Atkinson's euphemism is saying hit singles. They were not hitting singles. They were trying to go for the home run. And again, they tried to clock it too early. If they had done that, if they had executed until the 5-minute mark, we might be having a completely different conversation. But those 4 possessions or so where the clock went down all the way to 5 seconds, you're not going to get a quality look out of that. And in turn, the Knicks are going to be able to push off of that. And like you said, Jalen Brunson took over, hunted the hell out of Harden on switches. And honestly, like, the basketball gods, I think, repaid New York for hanging in there, because Mikal Bridges, that dribble around last second three he hit over Mobley was one of the best ones we've seen. And then he hit one in the corner. And Landry Shamet, I said he was doing a good job defensively on Donovan Mitchell, but Landry Shamet hit the one that tied the game. You know, like those were key shots down the stretch. And then the Cavs just kind of got in this mode where they could not execute offensively. Credit to New York, because Mikal Bridges was really good too, top blocking. You know, they have some really good defenders out there. But I feel like, and maybe you feel differently, Max, but I've seen this story the first 2 series. The Cavs just play with their food a little too much. And when they do that, it bites them in the behind.
Yeah. And with both of Harden and Mitchell, and it was really striking how similar this game felt to those 2 comebacks New York had against Boston last year, where like Boston's up 20 and they're just like, their offense totally freezes up. They're shooting a bunch of contested threes and just like unable to get anything going. And I do really want to shout out Mikal Bridges' defense, Landry Shamet's defense. And honestly, I thought Cat played really good defense down the stretch of that game, even though offensively he had a pretty frustrating game, I'd say. But his defense has honestly consistently been very good the second half of this season. I want to continue giving shine to that. But something that really stuck out to me once Donovan Mitchell kind of started to run out of gas, heavy minutes load, heavy usage load, is Harden did not look like he could get by any of the Knicks defenders one-on-one except for Brunson. He had that one shot to put them up 2 in the last 30 seconds, that little mid-range one that rolled in.
Which I just want to say, it's going to sound like a terrible argument because he made it, but when he took that shot, it reminded me just how modern hoops optimized James Harden is. Like, it doesn't even look natural sometimes seeing him take mid-range shots. And like, I'm sure if I look at his long 2 percentage, it's pretty good because he's one of the best shooters of all time. But like, it's just not a shot we're used to him seeing. And it just reminds you the importance of those inefficient shots in these tight games when you just need 1 point. You don't need 3. James Harden was 5 for 16. I wanted him to get to 5 for 19 because it would have matched the date on the calendar, which got me thinking, like, how many times in James Harden's career has he matched the calendar date with his shooting line? And unless ChatGPT is wrong, it's 1. And it was 3 years ago. Philly, who was it against? He was 4 for 17 on April 17th, 2023.
Probably Boston.
Against the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay.
But I just wanted to ask you, Spencer, 3 months into the James Harden experience, he is 36 years old, but also you traded a guard who at various points in his Cleveland career, Darius Garland, was considered one of the centerpieces to build around and like a truly special every few years type of point guard prospect. 3 months into James Harden, if you could snap your fingers and undo the trade and just spin the wheel on another playoff run, would you do it? Or do you have to take things as they are because you're in the conference finals?
Yeah, I think I lean towards the second option, but look, I mean, I grilled the Cavs for that trade.
Yeah.
Because it's understandable to want to get out of Darius Garland's upcoming contract extension and to say you got to go another direction. That's understandable. I would have waited to the offseason. You had the young guys hooping. I thought Jalen Tyson was outstanding as Donovan Mitchell's 1B, and he was learning on the fly. And yeah, I know that's probably a little bit tough to rely on for the playoffs, but an all-in move typically doesn't work the same year, first of all, which is why I think that this move was about more of next year and the year after that. But with all that said, Harden helped get them to this point. And it's interesting because his mixed bag is as mixed as it can get. If he takes care of the basketball and he just draws 2 and he gets off the rock and he hits the catch shoots that he's been getting from the Cavs, which he doesn't usually get in his career, then he's absolutely a plus, no question. Setting up Jared Allen the way he does, setting up Evan Mobley the way he does. He's done a good job at that. Even defensively, when he switches onto the bigs down low, he's got quick hands. He's a bigger body, so it doesn't hurt quite as much to switch on those. And that's something that you can't say about Darius Garland. But when he's turning the ball over, and I heard you guys just talking about how he couldn't get past defenders out on the wing. I saw that happen against Toronto. I saw him try to do that against all of those lengthy guys, those young, lengthy, athletic guys, and it didn't work. Saw him try to do it against Asar Thompson. It did not work. Saw him try to do it against Mikal Bridges and whoever else was guarding him on the Knicks last night. Doesn't work. That ISO ball does not work at his age right now. Not for where he's at. It works a little better for Donovan Mitchell because even though he's not as explosive as we've seen in the past, he's still got those legs. James don't got those legs anymore. So you've got to adapt. And when he does adapt, that's when it works out. But I still think that there's something in his head that thinks that he can rescue these possessions. And settling for those threes when you don't have it going the whole game, I think, was hurting the team. And he's not the only one at fault. I don't want to say that. But, I mean, the way that the defense was going, you have to make yourself reliable on the other end too. So if you're not doing that, then you're hurting him on both ends. And Kenny can come to his defense all he wants about his defense individually. I'm watching the tape, man. Like, I know you're trying to send them into the bigs and trying to get them to contest and whatnot, but Jalen grilled him, dude.
Yep.
Jalen grilled him, and by the time they realized he was grilling him, there was like 2 minutes left, and then they started sending two at Jalen, which then in turn allowed the outside shooters to capitalize.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you could have just given up layups if you're the Cavs. We were talking about like having some pride and not QB kneeling when you have that lead in the fourth quarter. They didn't even need to have pride. Just run Mikal Bridges off the 3-point line. It was the extra 1 point on those open shots that ended up killing them. And yet Cleveland was the team that took 53s and 42s. And in this land of find your switch and hunt the weak link on the other team's defense, like, you can't be night in, night out in the playoffs taking 53s because, like you said, Donovan Mitchell was having a lot of success attacking Brunson early in the game. But when push came to shove in the fourth quarter, it just felt like Cleveland couldn't get a 2-point attempt to save their lives.
At all. And it was tough to watch because, like, you see the execution work. Heck, I know that you said that the Evan Mobley 3 over Towns contesting was unfavorable, but he's actually been a pretty darn good 3-point shooter in the playoffs, and he's made them at those moments. Like, for anyone that hasn't watched the Cavs too closely, the moments and the timing of his three makes have been huge. It happened in Detroit, happened in game against Toronto on the road, even though they lost that game. Like, he has made some very clutch shots from out there. So I would actually trust that. And Merrill did a great job of getting inside of the defense, inside of the 3-point arc for once, and at least bent the defense a little bit so he could get Mobley a sliver of room to make that shot. But when you're dominating the ball, when you're going 1-on-1, heck, you could call it 1-on-5, that is detrimental. And when you're not able to draw fouls or get to the free throw line, that's not helpful. It's not helpful. And you stick to being too reliant on the 3 ball, which when the Cavs lose, it's usually that. Mm-hmm. And they didn't adjust.
Yeah. And, you know, just on Harden, I thought, as you guys have sort of talked around, I thought his offense was as damaging, if not more damaging than his defense last night. And a lot of the shots that Jalen hit were tough shots. Like, he was grilling him, and Jalen makes a living on tough shots. And
Jalen does that to everyone, by the way. He's the only one in the NBA playoffs with over 100 clutch points. So like that's another thing I think people are kind of glazing over is that Jalen Brunson does this to everybody. So, you know, we can take the Harden narrative and obviously the tape last night and say that, yeah, Harden got grilled. But Jalen Brunson does this to quite a few people. So I think it's also in fairness to him but just adding to my Harden point real quick before I get back to you, Max, there was one play that I still can't get out of my head in the first half where Harden is trying to initiate. The Knicks send 2 at him, but he ends up driving into a crowd of 3. He's falling out of bounds, and then he jumps and tries to toss this ball across the court to Evan Mobley and throws it, I think, into the 5th row. I was like, I don't think even Wemby's catching that one, man. Like, in that situation, it's even better to hold the ball and get a jump ball, or to call timeout, or to do all these things. Even in overtime, the things that kill me about Harden is just like kind of how nonchalant he is in these situations. Even when the Cavs were down 6 or 8 or whatever it was in the overtime, driving downhill, finally got inside of the arc and got to the paint. Evan Mobley was there in the dunker spot. Dude throws a freaking pass over his shoulder, no look, and it gets turned over. Like, you can't do that at this stage. And he should know better because he's a 17-year veteran, for God's sake. Like, that is what is crushing me when it comes to Harden's deficiencies.
Yeah, and the stat floats around of like his absurd number of games with more turnovers than field goals, or as many turnovers as field goals, and another one in the books last night. And yeah, as you mentioned, Jalen Brunson does this to everybody. He did it to Derek White last year in the playoffs, who's like lauded as one of the best guard defenders in the league. He hit a series-ending shot over Asar Thompson, Kelly Oubre, Dyson Daniels. And Dyson Daniels did a really good job on him. And people were wondering if something was wrong with Brunson in the first round. It's like, no, Dyson Daniels is just maybe the best person to guard him in the entire NBA. But yeah, both teams were very turnover heavy in this game. Knicks, I think, had 17, Cavs had 19. And I am very curious to see how that goes on, because historically in this matchup, it's been the possession game that really dictates things, where the Cavs typically have the more efficient offense, but the Knicks win the turnover battle. They usually crush on the boards, maybe at the free throw line as well. All those things were fairly even in game one. The turnovers, the Cavs had a couple more, and definitely some more untimely ones. But the Knicks, the comeback wasn't fueled by fast break points. It was just, there were some dead ball turnovers and then some shot making. The rebounding.
But even Cat, even when Cat was really struggling, he had that one offensive putback or offensive board. To your point, Cat's been really engaged on both ends, even when his natural smooth scoring game shooting isn't quite there. And I agree, Brunson's done it to everyone. But Max, I said to you after the game, if I didn't know any of these players, I would have assumed that the Cavs believed James Harden to be their premier perimeter defender, and they were pre-switching, because it was one dribble from the center of the court for whoever was bringing the ball up for the Knicks, almost always Brunson in the fourth. And it's just, I got Harden. It was that easy. You didn't even need a significant screen. And so that just looked so easy for them. Spencer, you mentioned Kenny Atkinson's remarks after the game. I think that his presser was about as strong leadership as you can have after a disaster like that, because he's right. And it's what Wemby said today, that Coach Pop told him, when you win, you're never as good as you thought you were, and when you lose, you're never as bad as you thought you were. There are a lot of positives. Obviously, the Cavs are going to take into game two, despite the all-time horrible fourth quarter, and one of those shots, one Landry Shamet bounce, one Bridges running to the 3-point line to jack a three from the wing, rolls out, and you guys are fine. And it was just sort of a scary ending, but you held on. I couldn't believe the nonchalance with which the Cavs team defense was conceding those switches. And on the Harden offensive piece, it feels like he's either in this land of nonchalance, like you said, chucking a swing pass into the fifth row, or you can sort of see him gritting his teeth and trying to reverse this narrative that he shrinks at the end of playoff games. Just holding on to the ball a millisecond too long, where in the regular season, he'd just be his normal self, savant passer, and get the ball to Mobley on the short roll. But he just doesn't get it out in time. And suddenly the Knicks have another live ball turnover, and they're going to create a good look. I know Donovan Mitchell's going to be fine. I know he's not worried. I know Max Strus isn't worried. I know Mobley's locked in. I know Jared Allen is ready to go for game two. But I really do wonder, what is going through James Harden's head when he looks up at the ceiling at night after another fourth quarter that will be part of his long-term story.
And he's not getting any younger. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. You can say, and people can assume the effort thing, but I just don't think he has the legs to defend on an island against Jalen Brunson. I don't think he's got the same amount of bursts that he used to have. He's got the IQ, but sometimes that it doesn't show when he's not thinking. I thought he made a perfect play last shot of the game for the Cavs. Yeah. Going left, finding Merrill on the curl, and Sam ends up shooting it. The thing goes in and out. Everyone's got the magnet ball theory. I think it's hilarious. But
the canceled bang from Mike Breen.
Again, your bang.
You need 1 point. It's a tie game, and so I watched that, and it just I'm neutral here, but it just kills me when teams are chucking threes in tie games. Sam Merrill is one of the best shooters on planet Earth. But, even the best shooter on earth is what, 45% there? If he's absolutely ice in his veins, and still, like, all you needed was to get fouled and make one free throw. So I just wish that there was more of an effort to create some rim pressure in that situation. But I agree with you. Harden made the right play, and you got about as open a look as you could hope for in that spot.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because I think Kenny Atkinson said it the best today. I was watching his media availability from New York, and he was like, in the playoffs, we live somewhere between misery and awesomeness.
Yep.
And there are two spectrums. And I think someone else, I think it was Law Murray, had a great tweet yesterday. It's just like, there are 60 playoff losses every year, and each one of them requires a crash out. And it's so funny. Dennis Schroeder said it well too today, was, first to four mentality. He learned that from Coach Bud when he was a rookie in Atlanta. And ironically, Kenny Atkinson was around those times too, when Schroeder was with the Hawks. And it's one of those things. And Kenny is not absolved from blame here at all either. I happen to agree with the masses that he probably should have used a timeout when they went on a 30-8 run at some point when it wasn't a 2-possession game. Maybe you call that one when they cut it down to 12, especially because they don't roll over. So it's one of those things where you have to be smarter there. And to your point, Drew, the pre-switching, that's something they've done all year long, and I've disagreed with it every single time. Like you said, there was no effort whatsoever on the Knicks' part to set a screen. All he had to do was walk to the other side of the floor, and Dean was like, okay, I'll follow you over here. Or Max was like, okay, I'll follow you over here. And Sam, same thing, like, just so willing to give up that switch when it was killing you. So you would think you would abandon your process in that situation, maybe to try to get Jalen to some tougher shots. And many of them were tough shots. So I'm not going to disagree with that. But when the same thing keeps working for the other team and you're trying the same thing over and over again, that's got to be the definition of insanity, does it not? So yeah, you've got to make an adjustment there. Hey, Dean, maybe, let's not let this happen so easily. Right. Yeah. Here comes OG on a drag screen to free up Jalen Brunson. And as you said, the pre-switching,
the drag screens were dragging. They were dragging. That was not a screening clinic. And there was one I actually rewinded because you can see Brunson take one dribble right and he's got Harden on an island and it jump scares him. He actually can't even believe it. He wasn't even ready to attack because he was like, surely we're going to have to show them like one other action to get the matchup we want.
Yep. No, you put it perfectly there, man. And it's been a topic of conversation around Cleveland all year about how much they switch, and their switching does work. We've seen that defensively for them. It does work, but in a situation like that where the outlier happens, you have to have an outlier solution. You can't be so stuck in the process to where you just continue to go to the same thing. And that's what I think Kenny did really well in Game 7 of the Pistons. He said his plan was to play more guys because they had been playing every other day. He was like, screw that. We're scrapping the plan. They're beating the crap out of the Pistons. We're going to continue to play the same guys. We're going to have the same strategy, keep going to the big man, and let the chips fall where they may. They won by 31. Why couldn't you do that in Game 1 in New York? Said, you know what? We got burned by Brunson on 3 straight possessions on ISO. Let's try something different. Let's call a timeout here and discuss this. Instead, it's like the Cavs were slowly bleeding out. It was really tough to watch as somebody who's covered this team and has seen this song and dance before as a Cleveland fan, not just Cavs. Mm-hmm. That had to be tough. And a lot of people around here are calling that the worst playoff loss in a long time. It's definitely not the worst. It was reminiscent of 2018 Game 1 against the Warriors in the finals. Yeah. The infamous picture where J.R. Smith is getting pointed at by LeBron James because he didn't know how much time was left on the clock. It was reminiscent of one of those. And you just add that moment to the box. But again, they've been through this like 4 or 5 times in the playoffs. So I think it's going to just be every game is its own series for them, and they're going to take it one day at a time.
Yeah. On the rotations thing, there's going to be a very interesting dynamic, particularly with like Dean Wade. And you mentioned him being out there. He's kind of the only defender who seems to make Brunson uncomfortable on Cleveland. And, you know, he's not Asar Thompson out there, but he's a plenty good defender. But what's the point of putting your Brunson stopper out there if you're just going to switch every time there's like a brush of air of a screen? Which I think is what Atkinson finally realized, and instead just put in Strus or Merrill because he was like, well, they're just switching off of him anyway, so we might as well try to get like a bigger offensive threat in there, which when you do that, then, you know, that makes you more of a threat on offense, but defensively now Brunson's comfortable going at pretty much everyone on the floor. So there's going to be a dynamic there of like Dean Wade, when he's on the court, it gives Brunson a place to hide defensively. And he's probably like, he's not a movement shooter in the way that Max Strus and Sam Merrill are. So Brunson can kind of rest on defense and not have to sort of be as worried about him. But then he's the only person who can give Brunson any semblance of resistance on the other side.
That's the other damning part, by the way, like that the fact that they didn't attack Brunson on the other end and ball screen actions, like that is mind-boggling to me when you're in the bonus as early as you were.
And he had a lot of fouls too.
And he had a lot of fouls, exactly. So you have to manipulate your way into putting him into the action at that point. Because like you said, if you can hide Jalen Brunson on one of the Cavs' 5 offensive players, then you're in a win because you're playing pretty much 4-on-4 at that point. So,
yeah, and I will say with the Cavs switching, like what's made the Knicks such a juggernaut over the previous 7 games before this was kind of all their off-ball action, using Cat as a passer at the top of the key and forcing the defense into all of these like off-ball screen decisions of, oh, do we go with Brunson going out to the perimeter, or do we cover OG cutting to the basket or McHale cutting to the basket? And in that moment of like making the defense make all these split-second decisions, you get miscommunications, you get wide open dunks for OG with 2 guys going to Brunson or vice versa. And to their credit, the Cavs switching, I think through the first 3 quarters took the Knicks, like I think big reason why the Knicks looked so poor offensively for the first 3 quarters of this game was they were trying to run all that off-ball action, and Cleveland was really gumming it up with all their switching, where Cat was not having his usual passing lanes from these past couple rounds. They weren't getting free off the ball. And then what changed is they just went back to like basically their Tibbs offense of like, screw it, Jalen, hunt the mismatch and like see what we can do. And it is kind of, it's new for the Knicks this year that they kind of have that change up of, or like rather that the ISO ball is the change up. And, you know, they want to try to play this more egalitarian style, which is when they're at their best. You know, they've got Cat with 20, Brunson with 20, OG with 20. But the switching, I think, kind of forced them into what is often like their worst self when it's just like Brunson pounding the ball. But if he's going to get to pick and choose the defender that he goes against and get into a real rhythm, then that's still a way that, you know, a poison you can pick that can lead to a loss like this. So I do think going forward, the switching is probably still the way to go. You just, you have to have more resistance as far as like make him start attacking with 10 seconds on the shot clock instead of, oh, he's got the switch he wants at 17 seconds. And now he has all the time in the world, all the comfort in the world. And the other thing, Drew, before you go, is the Knicks also made a key adjustment that I want to shout out, which was putting in Landry Shamet and having that true
plus 25.
Having that true 5-out spacing, which with a big reason also that the Cavs gummed up all the Knicks off-ball activity was they did the classic thing of putting their rim protector on Josh Hart. They said, Josh Hart, knock yourself out from 3, and I think he missed like his first 4 or 5 from deep. And he has to keep shooting, to be fair. And I think the starting lineup will stay the same. Like typically Mike Brown takes these things on a game by game basis. He sees how it's going early on, and then his rotation kind of changes throughout the game. But when they put Shamet in, that made it so that you had to guard out all the way to the perimeter on everyone on the court. And that's when you really unlock all the driving lanes. Brunson started getting downhill. Once the rotations happened, OG started getting into a little bit more of his bully package. He looked like, and he's coming off the hamstring tweak or whatever it was. And he started looking a little bit more comfortable physically. So I'm very curious to see if the Knicks lean in more to that small ball, or not small ball, but 5-out look. which a lot of Knicks Twitter thinks is kind of their best look, whether it's with Deuce in there or Shamet in there. But it does make them really hard to guard because they've got 5 guys who are real threats from the 3-point line, and probably, 2 of the guys you feel more comfortable leaving open, and Shamet and OG made huge plays in fourth quarter and overtime. And OG had like almost all their points in the overtime. It felt like drawing fouls and driving. So it did feel like they might have unlocked something with that 5 out. I'm just not sure how much they'll go back to that well immediately, which
OG 2 for 9 on the night, gives you all the OG Anunoby defense, and he's 8 for 10 from the line. A lot of those free throws coming in the deciding minutes of the game. Landry Shamet just wrote a love letter to MSG last night. And sometimes it's not even like, is Landry Shamet going to be a part of their closing 5 in this series? It's just last night he was in dialogue with the fans. I think he was talking to the fans more than he was talking to his own team. Literally after every big play, Landry Shamet's just turning and looking at someone courtside in the best way. Not like he was distracted. He was just in a flow state and he was having a really good time.
And real quick on Shamet. So this is time has flown with him. It is his 3rd year on the team, which I've forgotten about. I would have guessed it was his 2nd. And
retire the number.
And who wants to wear 44 anyways? And he dislocated his shoulder when he first got there, and they had to like move all these roster spots around so that they could keep him. And he was like a G League signee from them. They made sure they got him with the number 1 overall pick in the G League draft the next year. Like, this has been a guy that the franchise, despite all the bumps in the road, has been just like hell-bent on keeping. And he finally he's had moments, but this was like his signature moment.
Now I'm going to pepper Spencer with a couple questions, because we've seen Minnesota, for instance, have as much success against Nikola Jokic as anyone, with whether it's Julius Randle or Karl Anthony Towns banging bodies with Jokic, and then having a rim protector, Gobert, waiting at the rim to bother Jokic if he can get there. To your point, Max, Brunson is the type of guy, he's so comfortable shooting over you. If you have really competent, talented, athletic help defenders ready to go, he often won't even allow them to get involved in the play. And if he does, it means that someone in the corner is open for a 3, and Bridges and Anunoby make 3s in these big games. Spencer, how do you feel about the idea of engineering your defense so that Evan Mobley is guarding Brunson as much as possible?
Ooh. So I typically like Evan more as kind of a help side defender more than putting him on a guard, like, primarily. I could see him doing it a few different possessions for sure, because he does have that switchability. I thought Jarrett Allen was really good on switches just on an island yesterday. I thought he was so good, especially in that first half. Just really disciplined, not biting on pump fakes, staying on his feet and sliding with the guys and forcing the give ups. Both Jarrett and Evan are capable of that stuff. I don't know if that's the primary thing the Cavs should do. Look, I think what they did with Brunson in that game, aside from that flurry, was okay. Like, I think they can stick with Dean on him. I think you can put Max and Sam on him. I know people are grilling Sam, but Sam is always there. He's going to give 110%, and he's going to at least stay in front, and he'll try to draw a charge. He got called for some loose ball fouls, but hey, that happens in a game like this. So I wouldn't change too much of what the Cavs did on Jalen Brunson until that death knell happened. Definitely don't put James Harden on him primarily. You know what else I would try to, and this is in accordance to the rotation currently, and I understand why he hasn't been a part of it since game 5 of that Pistons game, but Jalen Tyson, he's got to get in that mix. He's done
that was my next question.
Yep.
How the hell are you guys going to win a marathon of a series if Jalen Tyson isn't sniffing a single minute in MSG, just finding his sea legs as a young player who plays with a lot of energy and a lot of adrenaline? Like, I just feel like you've got to let him feel that atmosphere. And it might not be because he is going to be really valuable to you in game 1, but because if you're going to win, there's going to have to be, I sound like Bill Simmons, but like the 12 points from Jalen Tyson in game 3 or whatever it is. You're going to need Jalen Tyson to hit a couple threes and cause some havoc on defense. It's part of the Cavs formula. It's part of what made them, let's say, a more equal opportunity team this year. They just had more guys chipping in. When injuries presented themselves, other guys stepped up. I mean, I was texting Max jokingly that like Craig Porter Jr. should be starting game 2 just because nobody plays harder. No, there isn't a better shot blocking 6'1" guard I've ever seen in my life. And that's going back to the Long Beach State days. Shout out Craig Porter Jr. I'm really interested in big development and the way bigs translate to the playoffs. And I think about, Mitchell Robinson imposing his will on Jared Allen a few years ago in that really disappointing round 1 upset the Knicks pulled on the Cavs. Jared Allen is a very different player a few years later, but you see really productive regular season bigs like Nimi Keita on the Celtics, like really struggle sometimes early in their playoff careers. What do you think has changed with Jared Allen's game then versus now, to the point that like he very much fits in and is a key piece in any playoff hopes you guys have?
I think he's just stuck to his guns and trusted the work. I don't really see, maybe there's a little bit more of an aggression to him, a little bit more of an angrier side. He definitely pulled it out in both game 7s in Toronto and in Detroit, against Toronto and in Detroit. Just complete takeovers in the third quarter.
Two more guys, Jalen Duren, Jakob Poeltl, like 2 guys that put up regular season stats. Everyone agrees are valuable, however you feel about their contracts, Poeltl specifically. And in the playoffs, like massive questions. And so like, what do you think goes into that, like big man volatility?
Guards not looking for him. Guards not feeding him consistently, because that's the case with Jarrett. That's the case with Evan. When they don't touch the ball, it makes it really hard for the Cavs to win. And I think a lot of the guards, a lot of the backcourts think that they can do it on their own by taking 20 shots apiece. Like an overarching view of the league. Like I think that's what they think. Rather than, as you just said, if everybody gets a slice of the pie, you're probably going to be in a good spot. And with Jarrett, he needs to touch the ball. If he touches the ball early, you're going to get a good game out of him. If Evan touches the ball early, you're going to get a good game out of him. So I think it's simple. I don't think that there's any complex answer to that question. And when they involve those guys, it typically goes well. And I thought they did. I thought they involved them yesterday until they didn't.
It was really until the 4th when it just seemed like Donovan in particular and Harden as well just kind of went into hero mode and were not trusting their teammates, trusting the pass, as Coach Tibbs used to like to say.
That's what Kenny said yesterday. They weren't trusting the pass. Jared Allen also just starts, the fourth quarter, it felt like he was running wind sprints. And it's just like, how do you find your rhythm? It doesn't matter what position you play. We've all played pickup hoops and not touched the ball for 20 straight possessions. You're like, what do I even do when the ball comes to me? Like you lose your touch, you lose your feel, your spatial awareness, and you feel less engaged. I think outside of the obvious all-time motor of Mitchell Robinson and the physical tools that really pop with him, I think that's his superpower. Like he had a 40% defensive rebounding rate in this game. He had 4 offensive boards, and he doesn't care if people give him the ball. He goes and gets it. But Mitchell Robinson is unique, and Jared Allen, whose motor is never questioned, whose winning DNA is never questioned. Like it's a lot to ask. He's also way more skilled than Mitchell Robinson. And so it's like he deserves to be fed the ball now and again. You're not running your offense through Jared Allen like you would other bigs in the league. But I agree. Like you feel for him watching him hustle and bang with all the physicality and toughness the Knicks have in the paint. He's doing a lot of work to be sort of disrespected by the perimeter guys on your team.
Yeah. And on Mitchell Robinson, I'm very curious to see what the rest of the series looks like for him, because he only played 14 minutes yesterday. He was a victim of the haka, as he has been for the first couple rounds, and it seemed like once that happened and he went 2 for 8 instead of 4 for 8, it was just, I think Mike Brown was kind of like, we're just gonna keep riding with Cat. And he's historically been a huge key in this matchup with his ability to dominate the offensive glass. And yesterday, the rebounds weren't really a big story at all. So I'm curious to see if that holds up in the rest of the series. And we've seen that Mike Brown and Mitchell Robinson together kind of have taken their time a little bit in these first couple series of kind of imposing him into the series and figuring out where he's going to be most effective. But he's going to be a player who I'm watching to see if he has sort of some vintage rebounding performances in him in these next couple of games. Because, yeah, it really wasn't much of a storyline in this last game. Like, as I said earlier, the possession battle was pretty even. And, yeah, like going forward, I mentioned one thing I'm watching are the Knicks going to keep playing 5 out? I'm also curious to see, like, are the Cavs going to play – how often are they going to run the double big look? Because it seemed like down the stretch of OT, they pulled Allen out, and some of that was probably to get some shooting on the floor. But just looking at the minutes, like Jared Allen's minutes are lower than you would expect for like kind of a gotta-have-it game one overtime game. I don't know, Spencer, if you saw anything as to why it seemed like his minutes were a little bit low yesterday compared to what you'd expect.
Yeah, no, that's happened a few different occasions, more than a few different occasions, regular season wise too. And Kenny just likes the spacing. He goes a lot with 4-guard lineups with Evan Mobley. And I know some of the wings that the Cavs have, you can consider them guards, like the Struces and the Merrills and, those types of players. He went with the Dennis Schroeder with both Harden and Mitchell out on the floor a couple times last night. He just wants the playmaking in there, wants the extra ball handling. And I think, to your point, when they're trailing, I think that's why Jarrett was probably out. But listen, I mean, you can still put him out there in offensive lineups. Mm-hmm. You just have to make sure to get him the ball. If you're not getting him the ball, then yeah, take him off the floor because he's not stretching it like Evan is. He's not playmaking like Evan is. He can playmake out of the short roll, but he's not driving and kicking. He's not passing it out of the catch. Like he's not doing all that stuff. Well, at least the catch on the move, I should say. So that's probably the thinking behind it. But yeah, Jarrett's had games where he hasn't closed this year. He's had games where he hasn't closed in the playoffs. Kenny's thinking was probably just getting more ball handling and shooting out there. That's probably as far as it goes. But to close my thought on Jarrett and Evan, to Drew's point earlier, I think it's interesting because these guys typically alter their roles sometimes during games. Sometimes it's Jarrett who's getting all of the touches, and then Evan gets put into this creator role and ends up playmaking and stretching and all that stuff. But then sometimes Evan's the one that's getting it in the pocket, and then Jarrett is pretty much a role player where he's going out and grabbing offensive boards, setting hard screens, defending the rim. It's really hard for them to statistically keep up together the way that fans probably want to see it happen. Because here's the thing with Evan, and Evan makes this – Evan's play style and his type is so different than what a lot of people expect because they see 7 foot. They're like, oh, why isn't he backing guys down in the paint? He should get big and play. No, he is a face-up guy. He is a 7-foot guard. He's a 7-foot wing. That is Evan at his best. And he is a hybrid guy. As I mentioned it earlier, I see like this hybrid version. Like sometimes in transition, I see Giannis. When he's in the half court, I see someone like a Draymond Green where he's throwing skip passes and he's not usually screening. He's usually slipping the screen and getting momentum towards the basket. So when he catches it, he's got some momentum to where he can draw a foul or he can make the next pass, the big to big passes when Jarrett's in the dunker spot. And that can alternate sometimes too. Sometimes Evan's in the dunker spot and Jarrett makes the play to him. Like Evan is not an old school big that's using drop steps and in the post all the time. And that's not him at his best. So I don't get why a lot of these people want him to play that way because it's not who he is. He is completely different. He is a hybrid 7-foot wing, if you will, that makes the right plays, defends his butt off, whether he's the anchor of the rim protection or if he's help side, which good luck when he's help side. You saw what he did. Again, Mikal hit the shot. Huge shot. But that job he did on Mikal to get that contest was astounding.
And who was it? Who was it where he switched hands? And was it OG he blocked? He had an insane block.
He blocked it with his right,
or
with his left or something. Yeah, it was ridiculous. And people do not take that into account enough, that he is just an everyman type of player. He almost had a 5x5 a few games ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's impactful. That impacts winning.
Yeah.
And the big question mark coming into this series, and the narrative that they've been trying to get out of the shadow of from the Knicks series 3 years ago, was that Evan and Jarrett were too soft. And at that time, yeah, maybe they were too soft. But they had nothing to do. That had nothing to do with yesterday. You brought up the rebounds battle. Evan grabbed 14 of those things.
Yeah.
Right? Jarrett had 7. I think 3 or 4 of them were offensive. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and that narrative can't persist if that's how they're going to play in this series. And I think that is how they're going to play in this series, because those labels, I frankly find them inaccurate and misleading at this point of their careers. And if you want to correlate dumb to soft, then I feel like you're just off base.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I want to push back on the idea that Evan is like a pure wing, and not that you said he was. He takes on a lot of different forms for the Cavs, but like,
sure,
Kevin Durant can't dribble too much because he's 7 feet tall. You know, like, Evan is skilled enough to be an NBA wing, but he's kind of too tall to be an NBA wing. Sure. You know, Jalen Brunson, these Donovan Mitchell, these smaller guards show us time and time again, it's just easier to protect the ball down there. And I agree with you. They should totally be creating out of Evan Mobley's IQ and dribble handoffs and short rolls and
hub.
Yeah, let him do it. But you can't have him facing the basket too much, just because he'll never have the ball security of a true wing size guy. And he's an elite rebounder, to your point. They need him around the rim. Even if Evan Mobley became like a high volume 3-point shooter, like, it would at times be damaging because you need him around the rim. He has such a nose for the ball. And unlike the Knicks, who have like a lot of gang rebounders, you guys really lean on Mobley and Jared Allen to clean up the glass. You know, guys like Schroeder, this Harden at age 36, you know, Dean Wade's a decent rebounder, but like, these are not Josh Hart, OG Anunoby type guys who are just going to go up and get it. So you do need Evan Mobley around the rim. But I also have no doubt that in a few years, as he continues to refine, like, Evan Mobley's going to be creating out of isolation in the playoffs. He's going to be hitting turnaround jumpers that he's not quite as comfortable with right now. And the 3-point shot just gets better and better over the years.
Find me another 7-foot guy who cuts from the corner the way that he does, right? Like, off ball, this guy is so good. Like, just watch the film. And yes, his handle does need to get better. I am completely with you on that. But if you watch him, when he drives left, it's usually going to go well. When he is usually going to well. And it's crazy because he's a right-handed shooter, but I call him a left-handed player. Because if you watch him, he is stronger with his left hand. And when he went at Cat yesterday and scored for a couple possessions, and he was fading away from the basket, he had to go high glass, but he was going left and then finishing right, kind of like Brunson was in the in the fourth quarter. But Evan is such a interesting case study. But like, I just get so angry by the stereotype in the box that people try to put him in because of his size. And yeah, when you need him close to the rim, I think you're most advantageous when you put him in the dunker. He had a couple of good possessions where he took advantage of early steals or switches, whatever you want to call it, in the first half. But back to basket Ev, he's not a jump hook guy. Jarrett's a jump hook guy. Like, Evan's not. That's not Evan's game. And if he can get to that face up, one dribble pull up, or that jab step pull up that KG had, like, that would be Evan's wheelhouse, I think.
Yeah.
And he had an opportunity at a mid-ranger yesterday that he missed. That was costly, down the stretch. But that's the kind of player development I want to see from Evan. And I think that he's still got such a long way to go. And I'm such a huge fan.
Shout out Tim Bontemps, who said they shouldn't have given him the max extension. I'll never forget that. Just insane. It wasn't like it took Evan Mobley a while to be good in the NBA too. It was just that he wasn't averaging like 20 points a game. So people who didn't watch the Cavs like really took for granted all the offensive potential in that guy.
DPOY and second team All NBA by the time you're 24. I mean, what are we talking about here?
Yeah,
like that's where I get my biggest pet peeve.
Max, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I want to close with just like some keys that I'm looking at for the rest of this series. And then maybe Spencer, from a Cavs perspective, you can share yours. The first thing is, I think, just to emphasize how huge I think that win was yesterday, I do think that the longer this series goes, the more it will favor New York, just because Cleveland's played 2 7-game series already. And I think we've seen on both sides of the bracket, like, how important it is to take care of business early. And historically, like, to make really deep playoff runs, you need to have like a 4 or 5 game series along the line there. And the Knicks getting the last round done in 4 and the first round in 6, but like a pretty non-competitive 6 for the last few games of that. The longer this series goes, the more it favors them. So getting wins early, getting a win at any time is important. Getting wins early, especially important. Do the Knicks continue to play 5 out? I would like to see some more of that with Deuce and Shamet getting like heavy minutes. I love Josh Hart. He's had a phenomenal playoff run, and there's been series where he's been sort of the key, particularly I thought against Atlanta. He was massive in his defense on Jalen Johnson. But this sometimes, when you're a deep team, you have series where it's just a better match for a different part of your rotation. And Hart's proved me wrong on this before. He could come out in the next game and have a typical 14, 8-8 and like 3 game-changing offensive rebounds. But I am curious to see what they do with him and how they deploy Mitchell Robinson as well to try to pound the glass where they can. And then the last thing I'm looking at is Cat and OG, who both, by their standards this playoffs, had pretty underwhelming game ones. OG, understandable, coming off the hamstring. Cat, I think, was really just, being forced back away from a offensive role he'd grown really comfortable in, that the Cavs are just much more equipped to guard than either Philly or Atlanta was. So both of those guys, really the Knicks' big 3 these playoffs has been Brunson, Cat, and OG. And can they get back to playing at the level they were at in the Philly series and the tail end of the Atlanta series? Because they didn't really have great games yesterday. But continuing to attack James Harden, seeing if they can pound the glass more with sort of the right deployment of Mitch and Hart, balanced with the 5 outlooks that they can get to. And then just like, where's the supporting scoring come from? Because you can't rely on Brunson to do what he did yesterday every game. So that's what I'm looking at from a Knicks perspective. But Spencer, what are you looking at for the Cavs?
Yeah, no, my biggest question is whether or not they go to Jalen Tyson. As I was saying earlier, this is a guy that since he hit Isaiah Stewart in the chest after a little exchange, has not played in the playoffs as a part of this rotation. And clearly he's in the doghouse, but he's 6'6", basically 6'7", with long wingspan. He can create, he can shoot. I think you got to go to him because of that game earlier in the season. You saw the kind of success he had, the ferociousness he played with. He has good chemistry with Harden too. Like, I think they got to try JT out. I really do. Defensively, again, I don't think they change much other than how they finished that game. Maybe Kenny goes to his pet set. He loves the 2-3 zone. He does. He loves running matchup zone too. So maybe he looks at that, but I don't see him making too many changes, guys. I really don't. I'll say this. I doubt that the Cavs get the 10-point Dean Wade game in game 2. That was a waste. That was a waste. It really was. And he shot the ball 5 times, made 3 threes. That was huge. Cannot let that one go to waste, but they did. I other than that, like, I do not see things changing differently strategically for them. I'm sure that Don will probably be a little gassed. Played 40 minutes, Harden 42. That's a lot. It's a lot to ask coming off of overtime, less than 48 hours. And before that, you played a 7-game series. And as you said, the longer this series goes on, the longer the games go on, it favors the Knicks. So it's gonna take a lot for them to dig deep physically. I think they have it mentally. Like, this is not gonna shake them, but physically it's gonna be a huge challenge. And that's when you have to think, if you're Kenny, do I got to go to some guys, try something else off the bench? You mentioned Craig Porter Jr. I doubt they do that, but
nope.
Keon Ellis played 6 minutes yesterday.
Where's he at? Let's not be Sacramento to him.
Seriously. But thing with Keon, he's really handsy and he fouls a lot. But JT, I think is my biggest change if he goes he goes there. And if he doesn't, then you might be asking for it. But
you don't have to sell us on Jalen Tyson. We both had him, I think, as a lottery guy in that draft. Like, we've been huge Tyson fans, and I was stunned to see how far he's fallen out of the rotation, because he is kind of feels like one of the only guys on the team who is like a true wing and not a guard masquerading as a wing, or in Dean Wade's case, almost like a power forward masquerading as a wing. But yeah, and on the zone thing, the Knicks have done really well against zone this year. So I agree. The switching is just what you have to keep doing to take away their off ball action, and to, take like Towns out of the series as well. Cause when Towns gets going, the Knicks are just a different animal and an avalanche offensively. So yeah, just keep switching, but don't do it so damn easily, I would say, is probably the Cavs game plan. But Drew, go ahead.
In closing, I mean, every year we see high IQ players elevate in the playoffs. Schroeder's done it in international ball. We saw him go 1 for 9 in game 1 and still make a real impact because he just knows how to play. He understands the tempo of long games. When in doubt, run Mikal Bridges off the line because it gets the fans angry. And I think it probably gets his team angry the way he avoids fouls and is always falling away from the rim when he's taking it too.
He's been better at it.
Winning heals all problems. Winning fixes everything. Well, winning game 2 on the road certainly fixes everything. If the Cavs can find a way to steal game 2, game 1 never happened, and you guys will be just fine. If you lose another heartbreaker or you get blown out in game 2, then, as Max said, like last year with Indiana, it starts to feel like that game 1 hangover might be insurmountable. So insane inflection point in the series. I saw this viral meme of like Drewski and Kai Cenat like looking scared, and it's like the Eastern Conference teams watching Thunder versus Spurs. And it's real. Like the 2 best teams left in the playoffs are in the West, but
they're
also
demonic.
Yeah. Oh, that word means a lot on this pod. But the East is too busy giving themselves, their fans, their coaches heart attacks to worry about the 2 best teams in the playoffs right now. So it's going to be absolutely wild to see where this one goes. Spencer, thank you so much for joining the pod again. Please tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, no, I am at Spin Davies on Twitter, on Instagram, and Blue Sky. This is going to be a mouthful, but I am a beat reporter for the Cavs, obviously, at Clutch Points. I also have a podcast called Cavs Roundtable, Courtside with Cavs on Cavs Roundtable. That's a YouTube channel. So please follow me and Spencer German on there. Leave a comment, subscribe, yell at us, do whatever you have to do to react to that show, because we've been on the road. We're clearly not on the road right now, but we will be there for games 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
He's on the road to the road. His content is awesome, guys. Check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much if you made it this far. This has been the PodCham Pod, and we'll be back soon. Peace.